Hi everybody and welcome to ECR, which is Epoxy Customs by Robert. It's my new channel. I just want to show you this is the first table that I'm making. We're actually going to be calling this the Starry Night River Table, and you're probably about to see why. As you can see, it lights up blue. You can pick your own color, but I tend to go with the blue. I think it just fits it really well. Came out decently, but if you look close, there's a lot of bubbles. It's just kind of not very clear. It was based on the epoxy I used, and of course the table's a little dirty. Same thing here. You know, it just seems kind of cloudy. I even got a stack of bubbles right in here that really didn't come out very well. So we're gonna do a new one now that we've learned some of the tricks of the trade. So basically, let's start off with this. We already got the wood. I took it down. One of the biggest issues was it wasn't planed and it wasn't trued to the edges, which I took down to a place that I'll put a link into the place that can do this if you're in Vegas. They were really great there. It was a woman-owned shop. Took me like 20 bucks, 20 minutes. They just took care of it for me real quick, so that's ready to go. Just need to cut it to size. Now here, we're gonna start building the frame. I already got the cut lines. You can see this is gonna be the base plate. These will be the sides. Obviously they're not cut to size yet, and then those will be the other sides. They're not cut to size yet. So let's get on that now. Okay, so we're working with a standard Ryobi skill saw you can get at any Home Depot. I really want this project to show that this is something anybody can do. I mean, look at my patio here. I'm not working with a lot of space, but it doesn't take all that much. Granted, the better tools would help, but it's not super necessary. You can do it all right here with some clamps and a skill saw and just a little bit of know-how. Here there's actually a little bit of a trade-off that I wanted to point out. I'm actually drilling from the bottom, but if you notice I have to move, I keep moving the clamps because the piece was not completely true, so you have to kind of bend it into place to make it completely true. Now, the better solution would have most likely been to, instead of drilling from underneath, drilling from the front plate. You're guaranteed that it's true, although you need a much larger working space like a giant table to be doing that. See, we basically got the frame ready. I just wanted to take a minute to point out, I don't know if you saw, I was doing things like I would clamp it here and here, and I can't stress enough, clamps are just really necessary. So Harbor Freight, go spend 10 bucks, it's really worth it. So I'd clamp it here and drill it, and then clamp it over here and drill it. And the reason I had to do that is because when I clamped here, the piece of wood actually sat up like it was crooked. So that's kind of how you fix that. So as you can see, we're nowhere near ready. You got some gaps that are gonna have to be sealed, but this is a very good start. Now that we have our box, and this is the most important part, I always tell people, don't cut, that was a mistake I made on the last tables. I cut the wood, the live edge wood for the table before I made the frame, because you're always gonna notice there's gonna be a little bit of a difference. You're gonna be a little off, it could be a little bigger, a little smaller. You wanna have the frame, then you cut the wood. So we're gonna get ready to do that next. The table there, sorry about the noise. It's 39 3/4. One thing I always tell people, don't try to, like I made a mistake here where I made a line here and I tried to measure and then make the line here, and I did the math and obviously I was very off. So if I cut them, it would have been a problem. So what you do is you cut one side, then you measure out, cut the other side. So that's what we're gonna do real fast. We're gonna do it on both, so you'll see that before this video is complete, that there'll be times that I actually went out and bought a 10-inch miter chop saw. It really does make the difference to get that really straight cut. You know, I don't know, I'm a fan of Harbor Freight tools. You know, for the hobbyist, you can't beat up the prices. I got a 10-inch miter saw sliding compound for $110. So would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of effort as opposed to doing it the way I am here. But for all intents and purposes, this does the job. Frame. So the frame is basically ready to go except for a few things like caulking and then putting down a wax so it doesn't stick, but we'll get to that later. In the meantime, now that the wood's ready, we got to do a few things to the wood. We're gonna age the top plates here, and you also have to drill holes in the sides so that the epoxy can get in and kind of act as an anchor. As you can see, it kind of hangs. There's a little bit of a gap there, but we know the piece of wood is straight, so it's not the end of the world if there's a little bit of a gap there. We'll be sealing all this in. If you look, see, there's a nice good seal line, and when we caulk it down, that will make all the difference. So we'll get to that in a little. Next thing you can see we're doing is I placed in all the rocks. Now, the biggest, hardest thing to figure out, these rocks, obviously they're just kind of in here hanging out. This isn't how it's gonna look at the very end, but this just gives you an idea of what you need. You see I kind of placed them away so that I have areas that I can kind of true down later if I need to. A little bit of the same here, but I will work on that. Now, here's the thing. So, epoxy is really expensive, especially the deep pour stuff, which is what we're gonna use so that we don't have that clouding like we did on the last ones. It's roughly about $100 a gallon. So, what you really wanna do is figure out how much you need. So here's what we do. We got a bucket here, and what I did is I filled it with a gallon of water and I markered off on each one. I currently have 2 gallons of water, a little bit over, but that's okay. Now what we're gonna do is, now that I know that I have 2 gallons of water, if I put all these rocks into the water, and then I can see how many more filled up, and now I know how many gallons of rock that I have, and then I do a total measurement of the table, and that will give me an idea of how much epoxy I actually need. So let's get started on that. Actually pretty quick and easy. Now that we have it, all the rocks are obviously in there. They're not sticking out above the water. So how far did the water level go up? Let's take a look. Was it 2? Now it's a little under 3.5. Let's call it 3 1/3, or sorry, 1. So it's a 3 1/3, because remember it was a little bit fuller than a 2. So we have 1 1/3 gallon of displacement. Now that's the number we need to keep in mind when we start measuring out everything else. What we're gonna do here, and I'm not gonna bother putting it on camera, but it's pretty simple what we do here, is we take a measuring tape and we just kind of go along and we look at all the different areas. Okay, so let's see, that's a foot, that's like, let's see, that's like 11 inches, that's like 13, that's like 16, that's like 18, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all those, and then we know it is 1 3/4 inches deep, and we also know it's about 40 inches wide. We take all those numbers, calculate them up as to what the total volume of that area is, and then we minus the area for the rocks, which is 1.3 gallons. So this is the part where I'm gonna sit down and do the math, and we'll pick up the video back after. A little hard to look, and my writing sucks. It's 1 3/4 depth, 40 inch wide. I took 5 measurements along the way of 11 inches, 12 inches, 14, 16, 18. You add all that up, you divide it by how many you took, and the average is 14 inches. So the average, even though it changes all the way through. The average width of this is 14 inches, which is actually fairly large. You don't see that very often for epoxy tables, and let me tell you why. Because when you do the math of 1 3/4 times 14 by 40, you get 4.23 gallons, right? Minus the 1.3 gallons of the rocks, you get 2.93 gallons. And it's just your typical table, 2.93 gallons. Liquid glass, deep pour epoxy, 3 gallons, $300. So you start to get an understanding of why these tables cost $1,500 or so, just depending on the size and the dimensions and whatnot. Most of the tables you're gonna see don't have this wide of a river. They have way more wood and way less river area. Most rivers I see are only maybe 4 or 5 inches, maybe at most. I like to do them a little bit wider. I like the riverbed rock idea. You know, as you can see, this one gets pretty wide. This one's even bigger now. We could save money by trimming it in size, but I think people want the full-size coffee table. I mean, this is what it's gonna be, and when you charge $1,200, you can't skimp on things. So that's where we're at. So here's what we're doing now. We've got the frame built, the what do you call it? We'll call it the frame. Anyway, so we've got it ready to go. I vacuumed it out, cleaned it really well, got everything ready. And over here, what we have going on is we have the pieces of wood. We're gonna try something new, and what this is apple cider with a piece of steel wool inside, and you leave it for about an hour or so, and it basically from there you use the piece of steel wool, and it acts as a stain, and it grays out the wood to kind of age it, make it look older. So that's kind of what we're gonna go for this table. So yeah, at this point, you can just hang out and watch me get started. Well, hello and hello. Welcome to sunny Las Vegas. Don't let the clouds fool you. It's still about 110 out here. We are in monsoon weather. Okay, so one step we skipped a little bit. I don't know if you noticed, the wood looks a little bit different. Kind of has a grayish with a lot of spots compared to the sides that are pink. Now, what we did is we did what's called it's like an aging treatment. So you take steel wool and you soak it in apple cider vinegar for about a day, right? And then when you put it on here, when it dries, it kind of ages it. Now, the spots weren't expected, but we can run with it. That's okay. And on a side note, I seem to be having a problem with my propane. What we're actually going to do is we're going to burn it right now, but for some reason, the tank only works right when I have it like this. If I have it up, it doesn't want to pump right. It just shuts down. So we're going to do it on the table here. Now, I don't really say that you should do this, but if you do, you have to be extremely careful so you don't actually burn the table or maybe these chairs. What we'll probably do is just gonna pull them off to the side because I'm going to want to hit the sides of this stuff, and I'm definitely going to want to hit the sides. I might hit the table a little bit, but as you can see, the table kind of sucks. It's not a big deal. So yeah, that's going to be the next process, so just Okay, so we actually did figure out what was going on, and if you notice, I'm actually using my torch lighter to continually relight it. The issue is that the type of torch that is doesn't really like to be upside down like that. So as you see, it's just kind of like putting off a lot of flame and causing problems. And see, I even started to use my little baby torch there, and then I decided to switch out. I had another one. what I would basically say as a recommendation, if you're going to get into this, you're going to be lighting stuff on fire, don't go cheap out on the actual torch piece, because they make good ones that actually burn upside down without any problems at all. And that's probably going to be what you're going to want to have. Okay, so we did learn something new. We were having some problems. I'm not sure if it was this guy, but one of the things you have to think about with propane and with these tanks is they don't have a regulator. So you can't do this. It'll just go out. If you keep it up, you're fine. So sometimes you just got to hold up the wood, as you saw I was doing, just kind of hit it. Now, some places are lighter and some are darker. Here's the thing, is when we basically go to put the epoxy on, all these dark areas are going to blacken out. Epoxy makes everything much darker. So we don't want to go too crazy on that. So far though, looks pretty good. We're going to now soak it down and wipe it down with some mineral oil just to get it really clean. And I think we want to drill some holes in the side like we were talking about, because they kind of act as what's what I'm looking for, like dowels. They kind of act as dowels once the epoxy goes in, to kind of hold the entire table together. So it just helps a little. And yeah, we're basically getting on that, and then epoxy is going to be next. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back, or maybe good afternoon. What we're going to be working on today is, you can see we already burned the wood. It's got some good burn marks. Maybe a little too dark though. And the best way you can tell if it's a little too dark is you can throw some water on it and see what it looks like, because that's what it's going to look like once you epoxy coat the top. So we're going to lighten these up, and we're going to punch holes in the side here, because what you do is you punch holes in the side and it kind of acts as a dowel to when the epoxy goes in, to help hold the table kind of more in place. What we're also going to do is we're going to go around and hit these lower edges here, because when we put the silicone in the frame inside, it makes it to where this doesn't fit up all of that very well. So we're just going to handle that real quick, and yeah, that should pretty much be it for this. Welcome back to the show, and are you ready to mix some epoxy? Here's what we're going to be doing. I got the table out here ready to go. We got the edges sealed up here, so you don't have to worry about that. But just in case, I'm clamping this down to prevent as little leakage as possible down to here. Now, I just did a light clamp on all of them so they're nice and level. Now we're just going to get it nice and tight. Don't go crazy. Don't break your clamps. There's no point in that. Ooh, see like that? That's why you get a check. There we go, nice and tight. Now, we're using what's called a pressure pot. These are basically designed to pop the bubbles and get them out so that you get a much clearer epoxy. Now, we've already tested it, so we're just gonna use it again today. We've got our setup here. We're gonna be going extremely watchful. I did the measurements online. I think we showed you how to do that. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix 50 ounces of epoxy. What I did is I did the math here, remember? 14 inches wide, right? By 40 inches long, but we're only going an 1/8 inch deep, right? And I did the math, that's 44 ounces. We're gonna mix 60, because I also want to paint these borders here and get them pre-sealed. So we're gonna work on that. And yeah, just get ready, here we go. Okay, so I'm not sure if I covered this, but basically this was the first time of me using the pressure pot, and I learned a very, very important lesson. First of all, look at the giant size of that tub. It is way too much epoxy to mix at one time. It cures way faster than you can actually get all of the bubbles out. So, mistake learned, and we won't be doing that again. Okay, let's try to recap a couple things. I had some problems in that first process, and basically it was the first time using the pressure pot for a large batch, and it got so hot that it basically fried, so it basically ended up being garbage. So we did a much smaller batch, and I just took the quick time to lay it out real fast. Now, as you can see, there's still bubbles in it, but what you can do is take the heat gun and pop them. What we're gonna do is we're gonna work on that. We're also gonna paint the sides here and get them nice and oiled up. Get rid of all the extra bubbles with the heat gun. So let's do that now. So at this point, we've decided to not do too much more audio through the GoPro 3. Oh, and there's my helper. I found the audio just doesn't come in clean, it doesn't fit well, so I figured we would just do overview voice from here on forward. Basically what I'm up to right now is I'm just placing all the rocks, and once they're all placed, coat of epoxy just to lock them in. There we go. Get it all out as best we can. And heat gun again. You'll see this repeatedly. It's a long step process of repeated coats of epoxy, but about halfway through is where we're going to put in the small accent rocks. Epoxy completely up to the fill line of the table, and we're going to start taking off the mold. However, we encountered a problem. I basically took bad advice, and on a quick side note, if you see that big yellow lump right there, that was that epoxy that came out too quickly. It heated up and it bubbled, and it turned into that giant, glub of stuff right there that basically had to be thrown away. Now, the problem we're coming across here is someone had recommended that melamine wouldn't stick to epoxy, but it turns out it does stick fairly well. So I recommend you either put down tape or you use some sort of mold release or like a wax or something to that effect, because you'll start to see here that I have a lot of different problems. real quick. I basically had to go out and buy a belt sander because, as you can see, this melamine did not want to come off anywhere close to the way it was said to. I reiterate again, definitely go out and get yourself some mold release or encase it in plastic or use Tyvek tape. Those are kind of the three best options. Had I done that, something that should have only taken 5 minutes ended up taking 4 hours. Got everything cleaned up, we brought it inside. We normally don't do flood coats on the underneath, but because of the way this ended up coming out and the way it looked, it would just be a much cleaner look to hit it with some epoxy from the underside and just to give it that fully flush, clean look on the top and the bottom. Up enough epoxy, so I am setting up another batch because we're definitely going to have to do some more. Some basic masking tape. The trick is to, when you're doing a flood coat, to wrap it with masking tape, put on the epoxy, and leave it for a while, and then as it starts to set up and cure, which is usually about 45 minutes or so, you can come in and remove the tape and it will slowly peel over the edges and get a good clean look. blot it all out, tape it down. As you can see, I already done. I didn't bother putting that on video because everybody can obviously have to see how to tape down the pattern. And once you do that, then you just go through and hot glue it. I choose to do this as opposed to putting it inside the table because although it is LEDs, LEDs do heat up, they can fail over time, and maybe one day you're not a fan of blue anymore. So at this point, we're just putting on the legs. Pretty simple. We use 18-inch pipe industrial style legs. That's just my personal preference. However, if there's a different idea you have in mind, that's always open to being looked at. As you can see, this is the final result. I think this is one of the better ones that came out, and I really like the design and the wider river bed. Thanks for watching. Feel free to do me a favor and like, subscribe, share it. If you have any comments, questions, put them below. If you have any projects you're in mind, just let me know, and we'll see what we can do. I think the color definitely shows out through here the best. Also, look in the description and you'll see the names of the music that I used. Feel free to go to their Bandcamp and buy some music. Support your local artists. Thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully I'll have a new channel, not channel, but a new video and a new product to show you next.